You are listening to the Mastering Business Basics podcast, where we discuss how to build a solid foundation under your small business to improve your chances of success. And now, here is your host, Roger Pearson.
Today, I'd like to welcome a special guest for you. His name is Cayko. And he's got quite a story to tell. He's had quite a career. He started out in construction, I understand, and he moved on there to architecture. I spent some of my earlier years in the construction business, and then the trades are definitely something we have a shortage of in this country, so that's definitely the right thing to be in. And then you went on to become an architect, I understand.
Yeah, then eventually a real estate developer, professor, professional fisherman, podcaster. I'm a guest on your show, obviously, here today, and then we also host our own show.
That's a lot of hats.
A lot of hats.
I understand that. I juggle a lot of things, too. This is always a question I like to ask people. Why did you decide to become an entrepreneur?
Well, the first contractor that would give me a shot, his name was Bruce. And he's my dad's best friend. I tried working on the farm one summer, and I lasted about a week. Grew up between a sugar beet farm and a cattle ranch in northwest North Dakota. And I didn't get along with my dad at the time very well. I still don't get along with him that well. But I was just not into the work. And I was like, hey, I want to try something else. And so I heard Bruce has a big contract with the Indian Housing Authority, and he's got to, he's going to do like a roof a day or something like this. So I called him up and I said, Bruce, I just quit my job with my dad. I've always been interested in construction, building stuff. It's always just intrigued me, and I'll do anything. I'll pick up garbage, and we'll do whatever you got around the job site. And he goes, perfect. You be my gopher. I'll pay you $7.25 an hour. And Bruce was the first entrepreneur that I ever met. And I think that was the big lasting impression that I had, and why I went down this road. I'm 43, and when I read about 10 years ago, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, I realized about midway through that book, I went, oh, I had the Rich Dad, Poor Dad experience. So subconsciously, I didn't realize it, in full view, and again, until I read that book. But subconsciously at the time, as a 13-year-old boy, I saw the relationship that Bruce had with money versus the relationship that my dad who raised me had with money. And my dad who raised me, his relationship with money was one of anxiety. It was fear. There was always a cope that mom and dad would say a lot, which was having money as an everything, which really bugged me because it was like, yeah, but we don't have any, and it seems like a problem. It kind of seems like everything, actually. And so Bruce did not have that kind of relationship. It wasn't even that he was rich. It was just that, oh, he's an entrepreneur. He makes his own time. He makes his own money. He seemed as if there wasn't this negative thought process around it. So I worked my butt off that summer. And, the idea was as soon as I was done picking up the garbage on the ground and cleaning up job sites, like, then you can come up and learn how to roof. And I was the best gopher he ever had because I wanted to learn a skill. I was like, whatever it takes to be Bruce is essentially kind of what I want to be. I mean, I just felt it in my soul, and it just felt like the right thing, and where, God was leading me. So about halfway through the summer, Bruce pulls me aside and he taught me my first business lesson, and I'll just never forget it. And he says, hey, I'm paying you $7.25 an hour, but what do you think I'm charging the owners for every hour of labor? And I go, $7.25 an hour. And he laughed, and I was embarrassed. And he said, no. And then he goes, sometimes it's 2, 3, 4 times whatever I'm paying you is what I'm charging them. And I go, isn't that stealing? That seems like immoral. And he laughed again, and I was embarrassed. And he goes, no. And then he explained business to me. He explained his service-based business in particular, right? Because that's what he was doing. He explained profit, overhead, risk, all of it, what it takes to run a business, and why that multiplier effect matters. And then I, again, saw his relationship with money, and I was like, oh, this makes total sense to me, 100%. Finish out the summer. At the end of the summer, he pulls me aside and he says, has kind of one more of these sort of rich dad talks with me. And he says, well, what do you want to be when you go back to school, when you get big or whatever, when you become an adult? And I go, I don't want to take your company, but I want to do what you do. Like, how do I do that? How do I become what you do? And he goes, well, and he said one of the most mature things like a man has ever said to me, I think, like emotionally mature. And he says, well, next summer you don't work for me. And I was a really good worker. I was reliable, I was enthusiastic, all the good stuff. And he says, yeah, next summer you go work for a different contractor and learn a different trade. And next summer you do the same thing. And just keep doing that until you've learned all the trades. And then you can become a general contractor. And I was just like completely sold. So I did that from 13 to about 20, even went to tech school. And that's what set me on the path of, I wanted to be a builder first, actually, right? In my sophomore year of tech school, it was only 2 years for building construction technology, which basically formally teaches you how to like wrap everything together and be a general contractor. Our capstone project was building a house together with our team. And so we started rolling out blueprints. First time I'd ever really messed around with blueprints. And the word architect popped into my head. And it was like a lightning bolt coming in with an idea from God. It was like, oh, what if you became an architect next? Like suddenly, like you're actually good at school because you get to pick what you want to do in tech school. And, you figured out how to monetize it because I figured out how to get all these scholarships and all this stuff. And I was like, yeah, what if I became an architect next? Because if I became an architect, they draw the buildings first. They get the clients first. If I could roll them into being building clients too, man, I get paid 2 times. Like I would have an advantage that nobody else had. This is a thought at 20 years old. I have 3 sons, 22, 21, and 18. None of them are having these kind of entrepreneurial ideas, right? And so I'm not saying I'm special. I'm saying, God gave me that sort of, thought process. I'm really thankful for it. So I applied to North Dakota State University, 70 miles north, got in there, graduated at the top of the class. And then during our capstone there, one more lightning bolt came in, and the word developer was thrown around a lot in school because that's who hires a lot of architects. Even now, right? I'm still being hired and or partner with developers on projects. And I went, oh man, well, one day I should maybe it'd be a good idea if I was a developer too. Man, I would get paid like 3 times. And once you become a developer and investor, then you understand you actually get paid, once you own real estate, it's actually like 4 or 5 different ways you can get paid. And you're totally diverse. So that's the summation of like why I wear all these hats and the trajectory that led me there.
That's amazing. Because I think you're the rare case because most kids coming out of high school nowadays have no clue what they want to do. I wanted to be a teacher, actually, when I went to school for education, and then I found out how the school systems work, and I says, I'd be fired every year. Because this was back when they threw out phonics. They said, and then they had the new math where 2 + 2 = 5. And you could teach for this book, but you can't teach from that book. And I says, this is not teaching, this is not teaching. So I went to teach in the corporate world instead, and I have ever since. But I understand what you're saying, and that's an amazing road that you're on. That is an amazing road. Out of all the road that you've been in, what would you say if you were talking, and you were very lucky to have a mentor to start out with?
I'm so grateful. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's what I think a lot of people miss when I, in my writings and my books and everything. And one of the things I always say is go find yourself a mentor. Go find yourself a mentor. You really need that because they're not going to teach you this stuff in school, and why make mistakes a billion times before you learn it yourself? So you need to find a mentor, and they're out there. You have to look for them sometimes, but they're out there. Through your journey, what do you think if you had to pick the 3 biggest mistakes that you made that you learned from, what would they be?
Oh man, that's an on the spot one, but I'll start rattling some off for sure. The 3 biggest mistakes. I interviewed a lot of people on my show too, and I asked them sort of a question similar to this. I'll talk about the one that I don't think we made a mistake on, which I'm happy about. That a lot of people do, and that is the answer I usually get when I ask a similar question is people say, I wish I would have started earlier. We couldn't have started any earlier, actually, because when we started my first company, the architecture firm, we were 25. I was 25, my business partner's 23. The average founder is actually 45 years old. So I don't feel like we made a mistake there. I do think when we got into real estate development, this is maybe one of the ones to identify, is I should have been more confident throughout the process, and maybe we got another mentor or two for it, because I think our inconfidence then made it so we got burnt out on the project at the end, and then gave up some control. And the control almost hurt us pretty badly at the end. By the grace of God, again, we came out of it on top, and we're all okay. But I think it just can't. It's like the lesson I wish I could have told my younger self is I should have read Marcus Aurelius's book Meditations a long time ago. Like the mistake is just not knowing what you know, right? So it's hard though. It's like, how do you're going through life and learning all of those lessons, right? Second big one would be hire slow, fire fast. But how do you know that without going through it, right? And I had to learn that lesson too, where I'm like, we sometimes, in some cases, we did hire too fast, and not slow enough. And what with that I mean is, like, really, you should be taking your time and not settling for the candidate that maybe comes to you or pushes their way through the door. And you got to just really know what you're looking for and wait for it. Even if it means you have to work a little more on weekends or something like that, and hold out for that, because that can become such a problem for a small and a large amount of time. Like, the problem could be small such that, okay, yep, it's Monday, time to go in there and fire Larry, right? And I'm just making up names, and then after that, then there could be this giant repercussion with social media and people angry and saying things in a disparaging way, about your companies and stuff like that. So you really got to be careful about who ends up coming into your small business. So I think that's maybe the second one that I would do. The third one is, I think figuring out the difference between buying into, like, I guess something that is said over and over again, which is we've heard it for the last maybe 20, 30 years in the business world, work-life balance. And it's kind of like when mom and dad were saying to me when I was younger, money isn't everything, right? And then my favorite rapper, Kanye West, finished that sentence for me about 10, 15 years ago. Money isn't everything, but not having it is. And I was like, oh yeah, that's exactly the part they were missing. Like, if you don't have the money, oh my God, that's all you can worry about. How are you going to eat? How are you going to sleep? How are you going to have water? How are you going to have a gas to, put in your truck, kind of stuff. So the work-life balance has always bugged me too. And I think really what it is, especially for entrepreneurs, is it should be a work-life harmony, I think, that we're aiming for, right? So for example, if you're an entrepreneur, you get to make your own time, generally. If you're a business owner, that's one of the things is like, okay, I'm taking the big risks, and maybe I have more sleepless nights than a wage worker. But the opposite side of that sword is, yeah, but I get to, like, today after the show, guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to go to the garden, and I'm going to garden for the rest of the day. Like, that is a work-life harmony, because I've been working my butt off this morning. I'm doing a public interview here. I'm putting our name out there, but, like, I've carved out those 4 hours today to go play in the dirt, because I know that I need that work-life harmony. Balance, I think this work-life balance thing that we've said over and over again in the business world is a mistake. I think it's one of the biggest mistakes, is because we think we're going to do a perfect trade. Because if you think of the word balance, I don't know what image conjures up in your head, but for me, it's a scale. And I don't like that look of that scale, because it's like, what am I trading to get the balance to happen? And I think it needs to be more about work-life harmony.
I think you're absolutely right. Absolutely right. Wow. One of the other things I noticed that you did, I remember, I'm a DIY junkie, so I watch a lot of HGTV, and I remember the series on the tiny houses, which were just so fascinated. I read that was something that you were involved with.
Oh yeah. Yeah, we're one of those. We're like proud of our appearances on HGTV, but at the same time, kind of not ashamed, but we realize we're part of the problem. And the problem is, look, I'll never take back going on television. We were on there 3 times, and what we were on for was season 1, episode 13 of Tiny House Big Living, and this was back in I think 2014, 2015. So it was almost over a decade now. But they filmed us designing and building a tiny house, and it was a really cool project. It's called the Atlas Tiny House. If anybody wants to Google it and check it out, it's on Dwell. It kind of went viral. We went on an International Architecture Award for it, and then obviously we got on television and got all this publicity that we couldn't have paid for at that time as a startup technically, right? So it was sort of huge. But the problem with the HGTV stuff is like they want to create drama that's not real. And they want to show all of these problems, but at the same time, they want us to see like, it's a typical sequence of, let's say it's a remodel show, and you go in and they show them busting up the walls, and then the next episode, it's all finished. It's like, oh my gosh, what happened in between all of that, right? And since then, now that we're full-fledged commercial level builders who do multifamily, single family, and light commercial stuff. I can't get a television show to respond back to me with like, hey, right now is when you guys should be doing a reality show with us, because like you would see actual crazy drama. And back then it was all made up, but it was a really cool experience. I would recommend anybody who gets the opportunity to even just do their little 15 minutes of fame, because that's really what it amounted to. Like where that saying came from in the 90s, when it came through fruition, is like, oh yeah, that's your 15 minutes. Like everybody did get, whether it's through social media or just like one episode on reality TV, you got your little 15 minutes of fame. It led to a lot of work because we were on television every 2 weeks. That episode would air for over a year. Subaru saw us on television for that first tiny house, which it's like a foldable transformer on wheels. Pretty incredible little project. And they said, hey, can you build us 2 more? And at first I said no, because I told my business partner, I'm like, way too hard. Like that first one was so hard. We were inventing architecture. We were doing the intense kind of engineering and precision to get it to fold and then drive down the road and not like rattle apart. It was very intense. But my business partner negotiated like a really killer contract with them, showed me the kind of number on what we were maybe expecting at the end if we executed, and we did. And I go, oh yeah, sure, okay, if they sign that, we'll sacrifice another 4 or 5 months of my life. So that led to our second set of tiny houses, and then ultimately enough profit for us to buy a third of an acre up in the city we operate in, Longmont, which is east of Boulder by about 20 miles, and become full-fledged real estate developers. So it was kind of all meant to be in the end, in that journey.
Amazing how life throws things at us when we need it. I find that true, if you have enough faith. So the other thing I wanted to ask you, because everybody's individualistic in their approaches to things, what makes your style of architecture different than other architects?
Well, I think it's honest. Lately, it's kind of the thing I've been telling people is like, look, there's an honesty about our work. Is a lot of and a muscularity to it as a result, right? And what I mean by that is like right now, for example, it's like really a dream project for me. For many other architects, it might not be. And what it is on the north end of our main street here in the town where our main headquarters is. It's a town of about 100,000 people. It's kind of the middle class town of Boulder County. It's still affordable. We have like typical families that are running around and just working class folks. And on the north end of our main street, it's desperately needed to get rid of this pawn shop. 6,000 square foot brick building built in 1939. It was originally like a Safeway grocery store. Then it changed hands many, 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 many times. A developer and I teamed up last year, bought the property. So I put back on the developer hat and then obviously the architect and builder hat. And we're transforming that right now into 2 restaurants, a coffee shop, and a vinyl record store of all things in 2026. And what's been really amazing about it is why there's so much honesty in this building and our architecture as a result is, we gutted the building, got rid of all the asbestos, And once we took down all of the old drop ceilings and drywall and all the partitions and everything, the building revealed itself to be this kind of beautiful structure. It's got these old steel bow trusses. So they're like, imagine an arch on the ceiling. And then it had all this awesome old world lumber that was holding up the ceiling that we took down. It was non-structural, but it was something you could attach the old ceiling to. We ended up using that old lumber as the demising walls between the new units. And then on the inside, we stripped away the plaster and opened up the southern facade. So it had all this really awesome glass and like large sliding glass door on it. And it looks like it's ready for another 100 years, but we didn't try to cover anything up. That's what was really awesome about it, is like the more we just stripped down and revealed and let it be what it wanted to be, it's got this amazing honesty about it. And it just doesn't seem like you're left guessing about the architecture of the space. And in a world where social media and the internet has kind of scattered us all, you know, politically, personally, it hasn't really brought us together, actually. You know, like conspiracies are a million, you know, just there used to be one in a million. Now it's just like everywhere. Nobody knows who to trust or anything. There's a clarity about that building and our architecture, I think, that people, when people see it, when they walk through it, when they touch it, and they feel it, they go, oh, I didn't even know I needed this. This is what I needed in my life, was something I can understand and that isn't confusing to me. That's how I would describe our architecture.
Wow. I think you're right. You're absolutely right. The world's become in some ways too homogenized, and we don't appreciate the beauty of it anymore like we used to, especially in construction. It's just, I mean, I'm currently like in the Tampa, Florida area, and it's just all the farmland is going for apartment cities and just row houses and rows and rows and rows of houses that all look the same. And it's such a shame. It's such a shame that they're not doing it in a way that makes any sense to me. It's just the bottom line, the dollars, and that's it. That's all they care about, and that's a shame.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. I understand you like to fish.
I'm a fishing addict, Roger. Yeah, 100%.
I used to. I mean, I graduated out at Loveland High School out there in Colorado Springs.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah. Lived in Denver for a while and Fort Collins for a while. Spent a decade out there, and used to go up trout fishing, and nothing better than a fresh trout. No. I'm one of those people, though. It takes me forever to get out there, but once I'm there, forget it. The rest of the day don't bother me the rest of the day. So I can understand why you love it so much. Not much good fishing down here unless you want to go out in the ocean. Anyway, so I noticed, I was reading some of the comments that you made, and you said that you can learn business lessons from fishing. And I'm going, what lessons can you learn from fishing?
You know what's really, well, patience, number one, obviously. You got to have some, you know, it really is a good reset. But, you know, there's something fascinating that has really been revealed to me in writing and speaking in the past couple weeks. It's sort of, a lot of times when I do a show like this, or even on where I'm pontificating in any kind of way of public, I have like a premonition about something that I'm describing, and then but I don't have the language for it yet. So that occurred at one point with the law of polarity. So I was describing that, you know, to a different host I was talking to, and I was saying, you know, the negative stuff when it happens in life, I just roll with it and try to not get lost and lose my crap, such that it ruins like a relationship or a day or whatever, because I just know that like the next day is going to be the opposite of that. That's how the law of polarity works. It's literally a physical law, right? So I was explaining all of this and telling story after story like that, and then finally one gal says, "Oh, you're describing the law of polarity." And I was like, "Oh, perfect. Thank you for like helping give me the language." The one recently with fishing is, I can't remember where I saw it even, but at about 25 to 30 minutes into giving yourself some silence, your brain clears. And that's when ideas are allowed to come into your brain. And because people are sometimes wondering, like, well, where do you come up with ideas? And sometimes you're inspired by other people, but the best ones like come from the ether. It really comes from like God and the universe. But you're never going to get there unless you find something that allows you to be in a peaceful place. You should be probably in nature, and that's where, fishing lies in. And so I heard this like 3 or 4 weeks ago, and I went, yeah, no wonder. Like because for me, fishing is not only just the fishing part of it, but it's like in Colorado, I have to hike at least a mile to wherever I'm going every time. Sometimes 4, sometimes 5, 6, 8, 10, way deep in the mountains sometimes. And I'd always noticed like, it seemed like a certain distance into the hike or the walk or the journey there on my feet, all of a sudden my brain would clear, and then I would have these ideas or something, a problem that is in my subconscious or even conscious that I've been trying to solve is like, oh, there it was. Awesome. Thank you for that. There's the solution. Instead of like sitting there and people thinking that they're going to grind out a solution. Sometimes it works like that, but like staying up all night trying to solve some kind of design problem or construction problem or business problem or whatever problem, I have found that to be much less fruitful then, which sounds counterintuitive, I think, to a lot of people, to just go, I'm stuck. I'm just going to go for a walk. I'm just going to go for a walk and clear my head. And then it'll come to me. It's the idea with the shower too, right? Where people are like, I get my best ideas in the shower. Yeah, because your brain is cleared. All you're listening to is the water. You're like immersed in it. You're not thinking about anything else. You're just washing yourself or whatever, or just standing there and enjoying the steam. And then it comes to you. So that's what I think it is for me is fishing is I'm sitting there, I'm doing one maybe monotask, I'm not really thinking. I'm just in the moment and present, and I'm just bombarded with, after my mind clears, solutions to problems, ideas for different things in business, ideas for myself, my family, all kinds of stuff like that. So then I do, pull out my phone and I have a little notepad in there, and I make sure I write that idea down and put it back in my pocket. Luckily there's no service, typically where I'm fishing, so I don't get distracted by Twitter or like a text message or anything. And it's kind of the best of both worlds. If people wanted to even go one step further and they're trying to do stuff like this, then leave the phone in the truck, the car, take a notepad up there, something so you don't lose that magic that comes into your head.
That's great. I do that. I love just closing the computer and leaving the phone off and going outside and working in the yard, because there's nothing better to clear your head in the world. And sometimes I come in exhausted. The other day I was running a hose bib to the other corner of the house, so I have them on all 4 corners of the house now. And I was exhausted. It took me 2 days. But I mean, at 75, I get a little more exhausted than I used to be. But it felt so good to just go out there and do that. So yeah. I understand that completely. So is there anything we haven't talked about today that you'd like to impart to my listeners that you think would be of value?
Well, I did talk about it a little bit, but I just want to refresh it one more time. And I think there's 2 things that are particularly speaking to the men who are listening to the show is because a lot of us are just kind of, my children are, I worry about them. They're young white males. I think they're the people that get drafted first. So they're the expendable parts of society. We've kind of pushed them down for a while. And if you have a son or you're a younger man listening to this, I think there's 2 big lessons I wish somebody would have taught me about right away. When I was my dad didn't teach me any of this, and so I try to instill it in other people, and that's learn about the law of polarity and read if there's one book you're going to read in life, go pick up Marcus Aurelius' Meditations, because I had the misconception about what Stoicism was before I read that book. I thought Stoicism is me and Roger just looking at each other. We're not saying anything, That's kind of a silly definition. Stoicism is much more rich than that. Modern Stoicism is If I'm having a bad day and everything's going wrong on every single job site, I don't go home and drink myself to death. I don't go home. I don't blow up at the subs who are giving me a hard time, the owners, stuff like that. Is like, I'm holding the calm all day, knowing that like this is actually all supposed to happen. Maybe there's some lessons I can learn from that bad day. But as long as I hold it together that day, I know that like the opposite's going to happen. Because that's how the universe works. That's how electricity works. You cannot have a negative without a positive. It's impossible. You cannot, night and day. All of these like opposites happen, and that's the law of polarity. But you have to know and learn modern Stoicism, and I think there's no better book and person to teach that than Marcus Aurelius in Meditations, who's very ancient, Greek philosopher and all of that. So that's the one thing I would love to impart with people is those two things, and that you got to keep the faith, especially in this modern world that's just so rapid. I mean, you can't even keep up with the news cycle anymore. It's like a 15-minute news cycle anymore. There's a lot of like illusions out there about what you can control, like voting. Like, is it really solving your problems, or are you solving your problems? Are you getting a good night's rest? Are you waking up early? Are you drinking your water? Are you eating whole foods? And I don't mean the grocery store. I mean like good whole foods, non-processed kind of stuff. Are you getting your exercise? Are you going gardening? Are you going fishing? So you control yourself. Great. That's number one in the whole Stoicism part of it. What can I control, right? What can I influence that I actually can make a difference in? Well, first it's yourself, then it's your family, then it's your businesses. And by the time you wrap your arm around all of that, it's like, I'm not sure I should be worried about anything external to where I'm trying to change the externality, right? It's like, I've already got my hands full in those three big things.
I think it's absolutely right. And one of the things I probably learned best early on is that the only things that are important in life is the things you can control. Everything else is just, you can watch it go by, but don't let it affect you. I absolutely agree with that. So, should people want to get hold of you, how do they do that?
Well, they can go to LinkedIn and type in my very unique name, Lance, Lance, last name Cayko, Cayko, and I will link in with any of your listeners. They can also go to InsideTheFirmPodcast.com. Subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, all the other good stuff. They can hear me twice a week with my business partner, and we talk all things entrepreneurship, business, construction, personal stuff like we just talked about, Stoicism. And then the last place is F9Productions.com. That's where all of the companies kind of coalesce. You can sign up for a newsletter and follow us and see all the cool stuff we're designing and building.
Great. Well, I want to thank you for coming on the podcast today. It was a very interesting conversation. I really, really enjoyed it.
Thank you, Roger. It was a pleasure.
You have been listening to the Mastering Business Basics podcast with your host, Roger Pearson. For more information about all of the business education options that are available, we invite you to visit seagulltechnologies.com and continue your journey.